Welcome back. In this video we're going to be replacing the lower control arms in this Nissan Titan. I do have a front end clunk, and I've recently replaced the upper control arms and struts, and that didn't take that away. It's possibly the lower ball joint or the lower control arm bushing. Now if you want to see those videos, check out my channel. I've also just done the tie rod ends. And the control arms that I'm using, these are Dorman. They were from Amazon. They were very inexpensive, which could be a bad thing. We'll see how they hold up, and I will let you know. Just a note, this isn't a complete guide, so do your own research. Check out some other videos. I watched a couple of other videos on YouTube, and they all did this procedure differently. So watch some. You might see different orders. You might see something not caught on camera or highlighted. So check out a bunch of different videos or the repair manual to make sure you know what you're getting into. And also, I just did the other side first, and the lower bolts were seized into the bushings, and I had to cut out both of those bolts, which makes this procedure pretty much twice as long. You have to do 4 cuts on those, and make sure you have some new bolts. I have some SPC camber bolts that I'm going to install when I put these back in. So for this job, you're going to need a large variety of tools, some needle and nose pliers to remove some clips, 10mm socket, 17, 18, 19, 21, and 22. And what I found is that different manufacturers use different sizes. They're not particularly the OEM sizes, so once you have some aftermarket stuff in here, it's not all going to be the same. For example, rough country, the ball joint nut, I've got moved tie rod ends here, and whatever you use. Like sometimes the aftermarket will even give you non-metric hardware, whereas the Titan is all metric. So watch out for that. Make sure you've got the right size on your nuts or you'll round them off. So I'm just going to start by moving my cotter pin here, and your life will be a little bit happier if you have an impact to do this job. Out of a lot of things, this is perhaps one of the more difficult things I've done on my truck, especially cutting those bolts out. Just grab your 32mm axle nut, which I forgot to mention, and you're going to want to remove your axle nut so you can get your CV axle out of the spindle. And I do have my diff removed already. That's for another job that I'm doing. You can do this with the diff in. With the nut flush, give it a whack. Make sure it's loose. And since my axle is disconnected, I'm just going to take it right out. Let's also remove this cotter pin. Loosen this ball joint. And then drop it. Okay, we're going to unclip our ABS wire from here, and then from here and here. We want to undo the connector, which is right here, and then remove it from the frame. I'm going to take this and wrap it around our spindle here, keep it out of the way. And I'm also going to loosen this. Now this ball joint, it's a 21, same as the other ball joint. I'm going to leave that at the bottom of the threads, but not take it all the way off. And then we can release it with a tap. That's loose. So one more thing, I'm going to remove this bracket with the 10mm, and I'm going to remove the caliper with two 18mm caliper bolts. And you might want a breaker bar or a long and we're going to remove our caliper. We had some rain recently and there's some fresh rust on here, which is holding it off. Whatever you do, don't drop it, because it will stretch the brake hose. There we go. Okay, after that you can move to the ball joint bolt. And we have a 19 on the nut, and on the front I have a 17. And I'm going to grab a breaker bar. And I have been putting penetrating oil on this previously. I'm going to get some more penetrating oil on that bolt. I might put the breaker bar on the bolt head and turn it a few times as well. Okay, there's our bolt. So once I broke it free with the breaker bar, it pulled out fairly easily. But we'll put some anti-seize on it before we put it back in. I wish I had bought a new one, but I didn't. If you buy a ball joint, you usually get a new bolt. But with the lower control arms, for some reason, you do not. Okay, I've tied up my tie rod end, and I'm just going to remove my shock bolt here. The impact and a 19 on both sides. Next step is to separate this ball joint. It's been sprayed with penetrating oil, and we're going to use a pickle fork. Now keep in mind that this is going to destroy that boot, so this ball joint is not going to be reusable. The spindle is also still supported by the upper ball joint. Ow. I think we just separated a little bit because it just moved. Okay, with the spindle supported by the upper ball joint, I put the jack underneath the control arm and tapped on the spindle with the hammer until it dropped free, and it's now moved out of the way, and we can focus on removing our lower control arm. You can remove the shock if you want, you don't really need to. There's lots of room here. I've tied up the tie rod end. On the other one, both sides were all seized, so probably going to be cutting these, which is not that easy or enjoyable, but we'll get it done. So I think I found my front end clunk, and it's this ball joint. This is up and down movement. The other one had a little bit of side to side movement. This one didn't. This one has an up and down clunk. Okay, after what seemed like hours, we finally got our 4 points cut off. Just be careful, there is a tab here. I ground off a little bit by mistake, but it's mostly still there. And also this one was the hardest because you have to kind of push the arm down to get in there. And I recommend a thin cutting wheel and not Mastercraft. I went through a couple Mastercraft discs and they weren't very good. This is a Bosch one, it worked pretty well. And we can pull this out. So you can see where the bolts go, they're slotted. That's for alignment. So when you install your cam bolts, they've got a special washer that you can use to adjust the alignment. And we've also scraped off a little bit of paint. We're going to go touch that up to prevent rust. One thing we have to do is transfer our bump stop to our new control arm, and this is a 12mm bolt. This is a little annoying because you have to hold this as well. I'm just going to use some pliers. Okay, these are our SPC cam bolts that we're going to use to install our new arms. And see, they've got a flat shape, and the bolts have a flat shape, so we're going to install a flat up, and washers are going to be sitting in a slot, and then if you rotate it, that adjusts your control arms in and out. We're going to install it like this in the neutral position, then it can be adjusted either way with alignment. And we're going to put anti-seize on those to prevent them from seizing again like they were. So these are also 21 on both sides. The OEM were 22 and 19. And these are going to go in the same way that the OEM ones were, with the nut to the front. Remember this flat part at the top. Then you can put your washer on. The washer is going to sit in those slots. If it doesn't, you might have to adjust a little bit. These are a locking nut. This one turned on me a little bit. Okay, we're going to ratchet these down until they're snug, and then tighten them to torque spec when the suspension is at ride height. So I'm going to use the wrench to hold it and ratchet it down. And then when you get that nut snug, make sure that the flat parts at the top and the washers are in the slots. You can use an impact if you want. I didn't have a 21 swivel socket, so I'm just doing this. Same on the other one. Actually, you do want your socket on this side because you don't really want to turn the bolt. You want to turn the nut because you want to keep the flat at the top. Okay, I'm going to swing this up and put a shock bolt in. This one's 1919. Just push the shock in a little bit. And that will hold our arm up. This one, similar to those, you want to wait until the suspension is loaded or at ride height before you torque that one down. I'm just going to run it in quick. There. So it's still not quite tight. Tighten it up after we pulled our protective boot off of our new ball joint, and I'll grab the spindle. I'm going to remove our top ball joint nut. Okay, I put the spindle on the jack and lined it up, and I'm going to try pushing it up with the jack to start it. Seems to work. And once it's high enough, we'll attach our upper ball joint and nut. Yeah, as I wiggle it, it's going in. We are starting to lift up the truck a little bit. I'm not going to go any higher because I don't want to lift it off the jack stands. Secure this. Give that a little whack too. Something else you can do is either before you do up your shock bolt, or you can undo it again, is we'll grab a piece of wood and hit down on the control arm. Okay, so I use the jack just to lift up on the spindle, put the shock bolt in, and that'll help push it together. We're also technically have weight on it now. We can torque our bolts down, and I'm going to insert the ball joint bolt, and I'm going to put anti-seize on that as well. Okay, this one was 19 and 17. Our lower control arm pinch bolt down here needs to be torqued to 70 foot-pounds. Okay, these new bolts are 98 foot-pounds. Okay, I forgot about the axle because I had mine right out, but you probably would have left your axle in there and you want to install it around the same time you're putting your ball joint together before you do the upper ball joint. And then throw your axle nut back on there, and you're going to want to use your axle nut socket and tighten that down. And then the final torque on this will be when you put your wheel back on the ground. Okay, so at this point you can reconnect your upper ball joint and your sway bar end link and tighten those down. Okay, we can tighten our lower shock bolt to 99. You don't want to tighten your upper ball joint nut. Well, this is locking nut. If you have one with the hole in it, you want to reinsert your cotter pin afterwards. Okay, and this one's 58. In case you're wondering what the torque is on this, it's 101, and you can do it before you put your wheel on. You just need a bar. Use your breaker bar. Cotter pin after you torque it. This tie rod ends at 21. And torque on that is 63. Some fresh anti-seize on here, sub. Get it right here, a rotor. Make sure you don't get any anti-seize or grease on it. To make things go a little bit easier, put two opposite lug nuts on. I forgot our tie rod and cotter pin will do that. Just gotta pin that a little bit more to pop cotter pin through the castle nut. There we go. Okay, so those caliper bolts are 155 foot-pounds. Okay, we can reattach our ABS wire to our bracket, and also the upper bracket, and reconnect it up top. So only connect one way on that. Reconnect it to the frame, hole, and then we'll reattach our bracket to the spindle, and that's a 10mm. I'll have to find my 10mm socket. Remove your 2 lug nuts from your disc, and we got to reconnect our sway bar on both sides.